It's the Happy Families Podcast. It's the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Families Podcast, the podcast for the time-poor parent who just wants answers now. I'm Justin, Dr. Justin Coulson, the author of a bunch of books about how to make your family happier, and the dad to 6 daughters, 3 in their 20s now, 2 in their teens, and a 10-year-old. Today, like every Tuesday, answering your questions on the podcast about how you can make your family happier. If you would like to submit a question, we love those voice memos. Just go to happyfamilies.com.au, click on the podcasts link and push the record button. It's super easy to use. happyfamilies.com.au, click on the podcast link and press the record button. That's simple. Here's our first question today. It comes from Emma.
Hi, Justin and Kari. I'm wanting some suggestions to help our 10-year-old boy. He's struggling with going to school and being at school. He feels unliked and that a lot of the correction in the classroom is unfairly directed at him. I have talked to his teacher and I can see the teacher's point of view as well as his point of view, that he can be distracting and unfocused at times, but I also feel for him in the way that it is handled. He does have a lot of age-appropriate autonomy at home, which is different to the school classroom, and I'm a bit worried we're setting him up badly or we're missing something perhaps in the way that we're doing it. I'm just wondering if you have any suggestions in helping him follow the rules when he doesn't understand why at school, or what your way forward would be here. Thanks heaps, guys. Bye.
Tricky one. And Emma also included some additional information in her email to me where she identified that he is withdrawing from friends on the street that he usually plays with, no longer enjoying playing club soccer, emotional, sad, easily angered, although that isn't really new. And it seems like there's just a whole lot of clashes going on. Things are getting him down all over the place. Emma's email also says that he doesn't want to go to school. He is getting there every day, but it's hard, and I'm back walking him in with a long goodbye before he goes to his bag rack. She says we're doing all the things suggested by you and others to help with school and sleep, but are not seeing improvement. And she also made a suggestion that the school can't community doesn't seem to be working out for her either. All right, really frustrating one. So many challenges. Oh, by the way, I brought Mrs. Happy Families in for today's episode as well. Hi, Kari.
Hi.
So I want to go over a handful of things here because it's just frustrating. And the other thing is a lot of mental health workers, psychologists, school counsellors, they're going to come up with a whole lot of solutions that aren't going to feel like they're working. This is what drives people crazy when kids are starting to say, don't want to go to school. Let's go through the usual stuff. First off, we've got to talk about basic psychological needs being supported or thwarted. We're talking about competence, relatedness, and autonomy. So if your child does not feel competent at school, whether it's academically or socially or in any other way, there's going to be resistance to going. Clearly, based on the interactions between your son and the teacher, there are competence issues, competence with behavior, competence with managing and regulating himself in the class versus what the teacher requires. Sometimes those teacher requirements are developmentally appropriate, sometimes they're not. But feeling competent at school is going to be a really big deal.
But if it's having that much of an impact on your child, then you can be guaranteed that regardless of how competent the teacher is, her technique is actually harming your child.
Okay, which brings us to relationships. Relationships have got to be strong. That need needs to be supported. In this case, it's clearly not being supported. There is a need frustration around relationships. This is a really big one. I mean, you and I were talking the other day. We just were having a chat with a friend who has, I think it was a grade 1 kid, who was literally locked in the cupboard at school by the teacher because the teacher couldn't control the kid's behavior. I mean, this is 2024, people. It's still happening. Now, this is not to bag out all teachers. Most teachers are doing a great job, and that teacher probably most of the time does too, but this is unacceptable. And when you've got a teacher who, I mean, in the email, Emma said she yells at him a lot and he misses out on class stamps and rewards but doesn't always understand why. Fundamentally, we're dealing with some massive issues in terms of the way that teachers deal with students. And I don't want to bag teachers out here. This is the reality of working with 30 or 40 kids and not having the level of training that's necessary to be able to manage these situations effectively.
We've had a couple of kids that have had really significant challenges in the classroom. We've seen the best and the worst of teaching strategies and knowing how to handle those challenges within the classroom setting. And I remember when one of our children finally got into a class and I literally looked at the teacher and I said, you're like the Mary Poppins of teachers. Like she not only did she absolutely love our child. She recognised her strengths, worked with those, and she found ways to manage the challenges that existed in such a beautiful way. She taught me things that I hadn't even worked out how to do.
Yeah. Now, this is not going to be a popular thing to say, although I'd imagine most teachers would agree with me. Some teachers suck. The majority of them, the overwhelming majority, are brilliant. But every now and again, you just get a teacher that does not do the job required. Or sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes they just don't click with your child. There's a personality clash. There's something going on, and you just can't get there. And so maybe the teacher doesn't suck, but perhaps they suck for your child. And in this case, I'm listening to what Emma's saying, and I'm thinking we're more than halfway through the year now. We're well into term 3. Tough it out. Teach your son that there is this thing called tolerable discomfort and work through it. Deal with what we call frustration tolerance. This is a growing up thing. We're talking about a 10-year-old boy now. He's big enough to be able to put on his big boy pants and work through this day by day, week by week, until we get to the end of term 4 and we get a new teacher who is back on it and doing things right for next year.
So it doesn't say in the email how long they've been working through this challenge.
It's only been this year.
But the reality is, so often when we're bombarded with challenges in our lives, especially when it comes to parenting and the way we're trying to help our children work through their different challenges, it feels like we're not getting anywhere, and we will constantly say, I'm doing all the things. But what happens over time is that those things, the consistency with which we attack or work with the challenges, we actually do see change, but we want change right now.
And it's a process.
Because we hate seeing our kids hurting, right? We hate being uncomfortable. But if we will just be consistent, often, all of a sudden, it will feel like in a blink of an eye. All of a sudden, things are different.
And Emma has also highlighted that there's appropriate autonomy, age-appropriate autonomy. I really love that in the home, but this is clearly not happening in the classroom. So we've got these basic psychological needs essentially not being supported effectively at school. Having another conversation with the teacher, I don't think is going to work. Clearly, this conversation has not gone in a helpful and positive direction. So this is about toughing it out. I guess there's a couple of other things that I would check. Based on the additional information that's in the email, I'd want to just have a medical checkup. I want to make sure that there's nothing going on medically. We've talked about the psychological needs. Let's double check the medical stuff. I think it's also worth highlighting this though. Attention amplifies discomfort. And the more we put attention on the discomfort, the more we talk about the problems, the bigger the problems become. Sometimes it's better to simply say, yeah, I know it's hard. We'll get through it and move on. I kind of flinch as I say this because I don't want to turn into Captain Tough Love here. That's not the objective, but rather sometimes our children need to know and understand that life can be tricky, life can be awkward, life can be uncomfortable, and we can still get through those things even if it means it's going to be a while. We have a daughter who is currently in Canada doing volunteer missionary work, and she's been assigned to work with somebody and it's just not working out. But it's only 6 weeks and she'll get through it. It's been a really, really hard experience for her. And we've just sat there and said, we get it. It's really hard. You'll get through it. Now, obviously, she's 12 years older than this kid or 10 years older than Emma's boy. But it's still something where sometimes life is hard and you just have to get through. And I think that there's something in that. I mean, the last option is that you school swap, and I don't think that's a great idea.
Well, I think that you've kind of jumped the gun there a little bit. I think that sometimes a change of classroom and teacher can be all that needs to take place. The child's still in the same environment, but has the opportunity to build a relationship with another teacher that might be better. Because this is, I would suggest this is more a personality thing. There's a clash between teacher and child personality, and that's the difference.
There are other challenges with that though as well. Like you swap classrooms and the teachers kind of compare notes and talk things through, and sometimes the stigma from the class swap, the kids talk about it in the playground, it can make things really uncomfortable. Maybe it's an option. I think toughing it out to the end of the year is the better option. I know that there are no easy answers. I know that people in the school can't community are going to absolutely hate what I'm saying here, but I just think persistence is the best way to go. Avoidance reinforces anxiety. It may be that a classroom swap is appropriate, but the child goes wherever the child has to go, right? Like when you move house or when you move neighborhood or when you move school, you go with you, which means that those challenges may persist wherever you are. I guess I need to just put in one big caveat, and that is that sometimes the advice that I've just given is the worst advice ever. But generally, in most circumstances, it will work for most kids most of the time. And this is the great challenge with this kind of thing. Emma, tough question. Hope there's something helpful there for you. Let's move on to question number 2. Question number 2.
Hello, Justin and Kylie. My name is Kari and I'm a homeschooling mum of 3 little boys. I started homeschooling at the same time as Kylie and would be really interested in knowing a little bit more about how Kylie is going with homeschooling, what curriculum she's using, what has and hasn't worked. That would be fabulous. Thank you.
I find it really interesting that Kari from WA doesn't say, Justin, how are you finding homeschooling? It's just the Kylie show all of a sudden. Am I not doing any homeschooling?
No, you are not.
Not really. Okay, I can say this. We're using Yuka as a curriculum. I know that much. This is not a sponsored post, and I don't know if it's great or not because I'm not involved in it, but I know that. Kylie, how would you answer Kari?
Well, the first thing is, yes, we are using Yuka. Did I do a huge amount of research into whether or not this was a good way to go?
Haven't got time for research.
I didn't, because we needed to start. And I also just decided that it was important to be gentle on myself and not try to know it all in one sitting. And so Yuka provided a structure and a reporting system all in one.
And it follows the Australian curriculum pretty well, doesn't it?
Yeah. And it just allowed me to ease my way into it. Whether or not it's what we use moving forward, I don't know. But at this point, it is pretty much doing all of the hard yards for me, so I don't have to do too much heavy lifting myself. Mm-hmm. What's working and what's not?
Yeah.
So in my mind, I had this beautiful picture of, structure. School goes from 9 till 11 every morning, and we sit down, and she knows that we start with maths and then we do English and then we'll do an extra. And I thought that this was going to be amazing.
You're talking about our year 4, 10-year-old daughter.
Yes.
It's worth just jumping in and letting you know that our year 9 daughter, 14 years old, she's pretty much doing it herself, and she's doing we think she's doing a great job. We'll find out in due course, but we think she's doing a great job, and she seems to be pretty motivated to just get it done. But our younger one...
But that all went out the window once we started, and I realised that the rigid structure that I had in mind that was going to work in with my routine was not going to work for Miss 10. So what I have learnt from my experience is that the more flexible and fluid I can be in my day, the more compliant and enjoyable Emily is to be around and to be involved, that she feeds off my emotions. We talk about this all the time. Emotions are catchy. If I feel stressed and we need to just hurry up and get this done because I've got other things on, Emily feeds off that stress, and therefore it's almost like everything shuts down. She can't work, she can't think, she just gets overwhelmed in that moment. And then what should only take us an hour ends up being a really big emotional process, and three or 4 hours, and we're still kind of at a standstill, not able to kind of work through it. And then the other thing is providing an autonomy-supportive structure that literally lets her lead. So we sit down, and like I said, I had in my mind we'd start with maths, we'd go to English, and so now what happens is we sit down and Emily says, I want to do geography. And I say, okay, let's do that. She feels like she's in control. She gets really excited about it. She gets involved in it, and she's really, really happy to do her schoolwork. So I guess they're my biggest learnings, and what I would consider my biggest wins out of it is her emotional regulation has just soared.
Yeah.
What we're seeing.
Different kid to who she was when she was at school.
Goodness.
And even our year 9 daughter. I mean, overwhelmingly, the kids are so much happier. The kids are so much happier with homeschool.
And over the winter break, we went away and we actually left her for a period of time. That was my biggest concern, was how she would cope, because in the past it has been really, really hard on the carers.
Leaving a 10-year-old to fend for herself all by herself at home for a couple of weeks is hardcore, but she cooked the meals, she fed the dogs, she maintained the house, put the bins out. She was great.
She was amazing.
Just in case anyone's freaking out, there were appropriate care people involved, grandparents.
Every family member who took care of her
loved it.
loved the experience and just talked about how amazing she was. And that flowed on to when we got home. She got up, she did her jobs in the morning, and then she came to me and I knew she wanted to ask to watch the TV. And in a split second, she looked at me and she said, Mum, I've done this, 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 and this. Is there anything else you want me to do?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm chalking that up as a massive win. But when I look back at the last 6 months and I think about all of the experiences we've had, to be in a place where I have a child who feels in control of her emotions more times than not, who has the capacity to do life without me for an extended period of time, and who in general is a much more calmer, peaceful child, I honestly, I'm so glad that we made the decision we did, even though it's hard.
Ask me what I think.
What do you think?
I think that it's the best decision we've made for our 2 kids and their schooling, but it's also the dumbest, hardest, most frustrating thing that we could have possibly done. We've lost so much of our lives, but what we've gained in terms of seeing the benefit to the kids, it's the ultimate reward. It's been absolutely brilliant. You've done a phenomenal job, but it is taxing and it is not. It's so much harder than we thought it would be. But Kari from WA, thanks for the question. We hope that that's helpful.
And good luck. Three little boys.
The good thing about our 14-year-old is she's mostly doing it herself, we think.
We hope.
The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. If you'd like more information about making your family happier, we would love for you to stay in touch with us at happyfamilies.com.au, where you can check out the brand new Happy Families membership. Oh my goodness, it's better than ever. It'll blow your mind. Check it out, happyfamilies.com.au.